Welcome to the Universal Dancer podcast with your host Leslie Zare, author of The Alchemy of Dance and the Alchemia Remedies. Coming to you from Cairo, Egypt, the ancient land of Kem. Journey with us to explore sacred dance, the sacred arts, the mystical and the magical. Join a community of like-minded souls seeking to understand the cosmic dance of co-creation through the sacred arts. Come along and expand your mind, ignite your creativity, and explore something new and something old. Welcome to the Universal Dancer podcast. I'm Leslie Zare, author of The Alchemy of Dance and your host for this podcast. So I have another very interesting guest for you today, so let's just jump right in. Brook Yantzi is the founder of Dance Alchemy, an intuitive business coach and healer, and has been facilitating transformational dance and healing spaces for people all over the world for over 10 years. With a background in psychology, years of healing, intuitive coaching, and personal development trainings, inner work, and a passion for facilitating transformational experiences through movement and dance, Brooke has created a unique method and certification called Dance Alchemy, which supports people in creating powerful, deep, somatic healing experiences for their clients through movement medicine. Let's welcome Brooke to the show. Hi, Brooke. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's so great to be here.
Yes, I think we have a lot to talk about. I think there's going to be a lot of overlap in what we're doing. So this is very interesting for me, especially. So let's just jump right in. I usually begin by asking how you got into dance or how that expression came to you. Are you a lifelong dancer, or this is relatively new, or how did it begin for you?
So for me, I went to my first dance class when I was 3 here where I grew up in Stratford, Ontario, that area. And I grew up loving to dance. I loved being in that studio. I loved dancing with my friends. I was the one that was creating dances with my friends for fun, airband competitions, anything that was dance related, I loved. So I got into it at a very young age. And I think it was partly, my mom put me in dance because she always wanted to dance. But growing up Mennonite, she wasn't allowed. It wasn't a thing that she was allowed to do. So she was kind of that trailblazer that was like, we're putting our little girl in dance. So it was something that has been throughout my life for many, many years. As a younger child, I did the tap, ballet, jazz, competitive dance, whole thing. And when I got into my 20s was when I started to explore more of the healing through movement and dance. I studied psychology in university because I had a really bad eating disorder and wanted to really fully understand. And throughout that, I started learning the power of movement and movement medicine and how movement and dance can help us heal. And that was really what brought me into more of the conscious dance. Was I really wanted to reconnect to my body, because as someone who had struggled with mental health, depression, anxiety, and eating disorder for many years, I knew there was just this disconnect, and dance was the place where I felt the most free and alive and out of my head and in my body.
Sadly, I think most of the population is not embodied, and I think takes a huge toll on our mental health, because when we're not embodied, we get sidetracked into other things. And I think dance is a beautiful healing modality for that, for whether it's trauma or eating disorders or depression or anything like that. I think it truly is a gift to be able to do that. So that's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that with us, because I think it's important to realize how powerful dance can be, and that it is a way to find your way out of these issues that come up. So
Yeah.
tell us. So what happened? Was there, you as you said, you did the tap jazz and all that kind of thing, and then there was a point where it became more conscious dance or spiritual dance. Was there like a pivotal moment or something that happened that kind of changed it from one, or an opening perhaps, where you realized the power of dance for this other, this mental health aspects and things like that?
Yeah, I feel like, as a teenager, I mean, as a child and a teenager, I don't know that I understood how important it was for my mental health to dance, but I loved dancing. And, as a child, you're definitely going for the things that you have fun at. And when we're having fun and we're being creative, we're happier, healthier humans. As a teenager, when my family and myself were going through a lot of big traumas, my father nearly dying of cancer, like some big things happening in our family, the dance studio was my safe haven. Unfortunately, the flip side of that was that, as a teenager and someone who struggled with an eating disorder and body dysmorphia, staring at the mirror was also very triggering. And so my happy place also became a triggering place. And I was so it became a little bit more fuzzy. And it wasn't until I was in university studying psychology and movement that things started to shift. And then, really, when I graduated and I started on my own spiritual journey, and I was like, okay, now I really want to explore myself. And I took my first ecstatic dance. I actually took this training called Dancing Freedom in California. And I just felt so alive. And then I was like, this is the dance I meant to do, or this is the direction. And I started to explore various dance healing, conscious dance, ecstatic dance, dance fitness. Like, I've explored a lot of different modalities where it just all started to click. It's like these moments in your life where you're like, okay, all of my experiences and my struggles and the things that weren't working, it now is starting to make sense, because this is, in that ecstatic dance environment that was very beautifully held, very deep, 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 deep wisdom connected to the elements of nature, like, and of many things. It allowed for me to dance in a way that I hadn't danced before. It allowed me to open up and to be free and be like, oh, it was like coming back to why I loved dance as a child, that somehow got
Yes.
skewed into performance and how you look and all the things on stage, that came back to like, oh, I'm just dancing because I love to dance. Right. So it was like that full circle moment of like, oh, this is why I started dancing. It wasn't necessarily for me to perform. For some people,
Well,
that's
and I think that's an important point, because um, what I've noticed, like teaching dance classes, is that a lot of women are apprehensive about taking some kind of spiritual dance because they do see it as some kind of a performance. And so I think it's important to make that distinction, that there are many different types of dance, and some of them it is what you look like on the outside, but
yeah.
other ones it's what you feel like on the inside. And so I think and for me, like doing this podcast, that's one of the things that I want to present different modalities, because there isn't just one. And I think we learn from all of them and we can incorporate them. And it's important to try different ones and see which one does resonate with you, because I think we have those options now. Maybe we didn't so much 20 years ago, but but now we do. So I think we have that freedom, we have that opportunity. And again, I want to stress to people who are apprehensive about dance that it's not for performance. Most types of conscious dance are more for what they feel like rather than what they look like.
Exactly. Yeah. And there are, yeah, and that's the difference between like performance dance and conscious dance. And it's a beautiful distinction. And, you know, performance dances also has its place, you know, and in this art form and the shows that we get to see, the performances, and it's a beautiful thing. And our souls are called into different things, and conscious dance has just been where my soul has really come alive, you know?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So tell us about dance alchemy, or your form of dance alchemy. I'm very curious. So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about what that looks like
Yeah.
or
So,
feels like. Looks like in a very broad sense. Yes.
yeah. So Dance Alchemy, I mean, I'll tell you a bit of the where it originated too, is like I said, I started exploring different conscious dances, ecstatic dances. I ended up traveling the world training instructors in a conscious dance modality that's very much about like loving your body, and it was really beautiful. And I did that for a few years, really building community and training instructors and becoming a master trainer. And then I moved into the mental health world and got a job doing youth engagement in Canada and Alberta. And I'd bring dance into all of my teaching around mental health, anxiety and depression and these things. And then my life shifted and I moved to Vancouver and I launched a company that taught mental health based dance programs, which were more of like a dance fitness. But it was definitely on the conscious side of things. We call it in schools growth mindset, right? So of course, for the Canadian schools, it's growth mindset. It was connected to the curriculum and really helping kids cultivate positive mindset, interact with each other, like healthy social emotional learning. So it was a really beautiful company that I ran for about 6 years. I had a whole team of instructors until I moved to Costa Rica. So I sold that company. It still is operating. And that was a program called Dance Play that my dear friend Melanie Levenberg created. And so I did not create that program, but what I did do over the last 10 years is I was teaching these beautiful modalities by people who I really respected that were, you know, 10 steps ahead of me in their craft, their wisdom, and their knowledge. And I really studied and learned a lot in this decade. I worked with over 100,000 people between kids, adults, teachers, principals, you know, all of the things, and training hundreds of instructors in various dance modalities. And then here I found myself in Costa Rica, really tuning in and starting to get messages for me to return, because I'd been working with kids at that point for about 7 or 8 years, after working with more adults for a few years before that at the beginning of my journey. And Spirit was like, okay, it's time for you to do more of the deeper spiritual, deeper healing work that you're here for. You're like the trauma work, the somatic healing, the spirituality, the energetic that I've been studying as well throughout those 10 years. Because I am one of those people, I'm sure you're the same, Leslie, where it's like, I love taking the training and the energy healing and the intuition and that, right? And so Dance Alchemy started to come through me. I just started teaching classes here and people were having such massive breakthroughs in these classes I was creating just based on my over a decade of wisdom and knowledge and based on what people were needing and what my community was needing. And after about a year of teaching classes here, Spirit was like, okay, it's time for you to create this global movement. And I got this massive vision of creating a global movement of dance alchemists where we literally are igniting the world and helping people heal deeply through movement. and igniting the world with light, because I really feel like more light and play and joy is also needed. So
Yes.
even though the alchemy can be a pretty intense process, and it is, it's also like this planet needs a lot more play and creativity and joy. And so Dance Alchemy came through, and because I've trained hundreds of people in various dance modalities, the instructor training was so easy for me to create. I'm like, I've done this, like, and here it is. And it's based, Dance Alchemy is actually based on the elements, because living in Costa Rica, I'm literally in the elements. Like I live in the jungle. So my view right now is a bunch of trees, a mountain, and a lot of flowers and fruits. And then I go for walks every morning along a river, and I bathe in a waterfall, and I spend time at the ocean, and I'm in the elements all the time. And so Dance Alchemy is very connected to the elements, because this is my happy place as well, is nature. And it really was created outdoors. And so we start in earth, which is really about grounding and allowing people's nervous systems to feel safe, allowing people to arrive in the space, because so often people come into a space and there's so much like different stories that are swirling around. They're coming in from traffic or the activity, that activity, like the chaos in their nervous systems. And so it's like we calm and ground people's nervous systems and allow them to feel really safe in the space. And then we move more in the water element, where we're flowing around the room, interacting with other people, where I actually bring in simple movements to help connect people to the rhythm, connecting people to the style of music, getting people really into their bodies. We're really guiding people home. And it's kind of like, we have like the riverbanks so that the water can flow. And even teaching people to like smile at each other and make eye contact. And there's something, that we need to reteach people. And there's like a coherence that's brought together in this water element. And then we move into the fire element, which is all about like releasing and transmuting and really helping people. And this one starts out guided and starts out with like simple movements of somatic release, of cathartic release. And then we move into more of the ecstatic dance, where it's like, okay, now inviting what wants to move, what wants to be seen and expressed and witnessed. And as we know, that fire element is like the alchemy, is like the transmutation. And then we move into the air element, which is like that expansion. Because once we've burned all of that away, once we've allowed what no longer serves to be released from the body, we can really feel a more expanded version of ourselves. We can feel that like breath of like, here I am, that remembrance of our aliveness, of our truth, of our vision moving forward, of our connection to our higher self of spirit. It's like that spreading of the wings in the air. And then we end in ether and really anchor it in with a really beautiful, deep meditation. So that's like the flow of Dance Alchemy. And it's just been so profound. And when Spirit brought me the vision for this, and it was like, this isn't just about you teaching. And I've always had, everything I do ends up being not about me. It's like, okay, this vision is so much greater, because I can only teach so many classes.
Exactly.
What I love doing is I love teaching people how to teach so that they can go out there and ignite their communities. So it's really beautiful to witness people going through our trainings, and then they're out there and they're teaching classes, and their people are having huge breakthroughs and big ahas. And there's so much healing truly that's happening on the dance floor. And we're now, I launched Dance Alchemy a year and a half ago. And little did I know that it was the exact medicine that my soul was going to need, as I, about 6 months in, went through a divorce. And it was exactly the medicine that my soul actually was needing. And so many people have asked me, like, how have you managed to bring this to the world? We're now on 4 continents with instructors all over, which I don't even fully understand how this happens. Like the power of social media and the power of, and I do present at conferences and events, but that first 6 months of my divorce, I was deep in my own healing and embracing this dance, this somatic, this movement medicine, and deepening my understanding of like the body keeping the score, and that things like heartbreak and divorce they're not just bringing up stuff from this person. It's like my mother and my grandmother, and it's like the deep
Exactly.
trauma. So it's like I was going through my own deep process and sharing snippets of it, and in that, people were starting to find me and wanting to be a part of this dance medicine, realizing that it's like so much more than just dance. Like this is like deep ancestral healing that we're releasing from our bodies, that we're transmuting, that we're processing.
And that's what we need at this point in time. And I do think that we're given the tools that we need just before we need them. So I'm sure you were given that form because something was coming, and you needed it for your own experience, for your own journey. I also think that then you walk the talk. Then you've done it. Then you've been through whatever this is, and you've used this tool to get you through. And I think that gives you a lot more credibility as well, because you have been through that process in a very deep way. So I think that's important. It's unfortunate that we have to go through those things, but wonderful that we have the tools to be able to get through them. Yes.
Absolutely.
I want to go back just a minute to talking about children, because I think what I see is that dance is such a beneficial thing for children as a way to, again, stay embodied and to be able to work through their issues. And so that's wonderful that the Canadian government actually put that in schools. I'm very excited about that. But what I mean, how were you working with children? Were you working with them in any kind of was it in any kind of a mental health way, or it was more about just staying embodied, or not losing the ability to play, or how exactly were you working with children?
Yeah, great question. So when I lived in Alberta, I worked specifically for a mental health organization, and my job was the youth engagement facilitator. And I was hired, and I'd go into schools, and depending on the group, I had some groups that I met with every single week, and we talked about like anti-bullying, we talked about mental health, we talked about all different things, and I'd bring a lot of dance and movement into it. Sometimes I would do anti-bullying assemblies for the whole school, and I'd bring dance into it. So there were many different ways that I'd present at conferences, and I'd be talking about anxiety, and I'd talk about how moving our bodies is really good for anxiety. So it was often very much weaved into the mental health conversation. When I lived in British Columbia, I then started teaching a program called Dance Play, that was specifically a week-long program. So we were like the dance experts. And in British Columbia, and I believe in all the Canadian curriculum, dance is a mark that teachers have to give as part of like their phys ed or their art. So it's a mark. It's a small mark. It's like, it's like certain grades, like you have to play basketball and you have to play volleyball, right? Like you get a mark for these things, and dance is one of them. And so we were the experts essentially that would come in and teach the dance curriculum. So they'd get their dance mark, because most teachers wouldn't know how to teach it, right? Like, and, lots of phys ed teachers can teach volleyball and basketball and, all the other sports. But when it comes to dance, I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. And then
intimidating.
Yeah, totally. And most phys ed teachers are pretty sporty, which is great, which is why they can teach a wide variety of things. And then dance comes, they're like, no, thanks. So it was a beautiful opening for us. So it was less about the government, even though they needed that. And they did get some funding from the government. It was often like the parent councils, at least in British Columbia. It was different, sometimes grants. But the beautiful thing about dance was not only was it the physical activity, where we taught about physical literacy. So kids actually have like just the way that we have reading literacy, kids have physical literacy. At certain ages, they should be able to do certain things. Hop, like hop, skip, run, jump. Like there's certain things. And for the most part, kids are falling behind in those milestones because, our reliance on technology, inactivity,
Wow.
kids aren't out there playing like they used to.
Yeah.
So that was one aspect. Then we would infuse especially positive mental health and how to have like a resilient and healthy, um, healthy positive outlook, because growth mindset, like instead of saying I can't do this, it's like I'll try. Okay, and like building on that, I'll try and then I can do this and I am awesome. So we'd like build on like how to build your resiliency and your positive mindset. And then we also brought in the social emotional learning. So like, because dance is so great for them to like work in partners and work in pairs and like, and high five each other and smile. And it's just like, it moves so fast that they don't have the same filters of like, where's my best friend? I need the part. And we were able to infuse these really powerful lessons into our dance. And then we'd have different subjects. So one of our subjects was actually movement and mental health. It was a mental health week. And so we talked about emotions and how it's healthy for them to feel emotions. And we'd put on different songs and get them to dance, to like identify what emotion would bring up and how do you want to dance when you're angry and how can we stomp our feet and let it out. And so we teach them. It was just like such a beautiful program to be able to teach such a big variety of things. And schools loved it. We grew so quickly. Schools were craving it because ultimately, yeah, ultimately, and like healthy emotional resiliency, because ultimately teachers are overloaded and they have a lot on their plates. And now, especially, they're being asked to be counselors and therapists and to deal with behavior issues and all these different things. And they just don't always have the capacity or sometimes the training, like I do have a big mental health and kids background, and the program was so profound that I know that we taught not only the kids, but the adults too, where it was like, okay, this makes sense, like so many adults need to be like,
exactly.
Anger
That
is
was my thought, is that adults need to take that course because they didn't get it when they were children.
Exactly.
We need to go back. I mean, whether they're spiritually minded or not, this could be a wonderful course for adults just to take them back to that, what they didn't get as children.
Totally. And that's a big part of what we bring for Dance Alchemy is like the emotional intelligence, helping people really be able to feel again. Because it is the feeling that releases things from our body. And dance just has often a more direct access to that feeling because we're not trying to figure it out or rationalize it. We can just express it and move it. And when we're doing that, we're bypassing the brain.
Well, and there's many ways to communicate. So maybe a child doesn't have words to express certain emotions, but they possibly could express it through a movement or in some other creative way. And I think that as adults, we just get so locked into that. I mean, I find that in my classes very often at the end, people just want to explain their whole experience. And maybe you shouldn't. Like, maybe you should just leave it in this. I mean, maybe you should, depending upon what it is. But sometimes I think we should just leave it in some form that maybe doesn't have language, because it is beyond language at some point. And so I think that I think children are still in that place. They haven't become so ingrained in this idea that we need to communicate just with words. So so how was it? Like, what if you could compare? I mean, I think it's an interesting thing to think about, like, what was it like to teach children as opposed to adults? Like, where because I think that the children still have that concept of play, whereas adults, when you want them to play, you want them to, be creative and try different things, they get very regimented and feel like they shouldn't do it unless they already know how to do it. So what were your experiences, just sort of compare it, not that we need to compare, but I'm curious about different age groups, like what the difference is in trying to teach them.
I mean, kids are so interesting because when they're really young, you put music on and they're all just like dancing around. They're free. They're not thinking.
Exactly.
But as you get older, they start to become self-conscious. Their body image stuff starts happening. The crushes on the other people. Like there's so many different, the insecurities start to come up. So yeah, the younger that kids are, the more free they are. Absolutely. The more connected they are to play. So, and they just like love it. They love the expression. They feel so alive, and it's so good for them because there aren't actually a ton of outlets quite like something like dance play for kids, where we're getting them to like rock star pose. We're getting them to skip all around and high five each other. Like there's such an element of freedom in that with enough structure. I mean, with kids, it's like, you've got to have enough structure that they're not like, you can't just do an ecstatic dance.
Chaos.
It's pure chaos. You still have to teach them some stuff, but they absorbed it so well. As they got older, grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, it's starting to get harder, but the breakthroughs are more profound. Because if we can help them feel more confident in their bodies in grade 7 or grade 8 when they're feeling really insecure, that's going to be a pretty big breakthrough for the rest of their life, right? Like we think of all the things we picked up at different stages of our life. If we had a different experience, maybe at the age of 30, we wouldn't be so shut down and afraid to dance in front of other people. Maybe if we were taught that you can't, that there's no right or wrong, that it's just your own style, that would be that's a pretty big breakthrough, right? In a world that's constantly trying to get it right. When you're a preteen or a teen, it's like, wear the right thing, hang out with the right people, get the right grades, right? Like it's a lot of getting it right. And so there's so many elements. There's a lot of looking cool. But what if it wasn't about looking one way? Because then we'd all just be robots. What if it was actually the coolest thing was to look like you, And so like these things that in concept make sense. And there's a lot of people that like to talk to teens about this. But the embodiment piece is game changing. It is the piece where they're not just hearing the words, they're hearing it and they're experiencing it in real time. And I'm not like going up there preaching to them. I mean, we do a bit of an intro, but they're literally experiencing it in real time. So they're having that cellular, that deeper integration of a concept that, lots of people are talking about, like love yourself and be your own person. And that's a beautiful concept. But when they're actually experiencing how it's like, actually, isn't it more fun when everyone looks different? Like, isn't the dance way more fun? And aren't you more inspired by people, especially the ones that have the courage to be a little bit weird? Like, isn't that fun? Like when you see someone, and so it's really mind blowing for them. And then for them to also experience it as a collective. So they're experiencing it in their classes or usually there's a couple classes in the school gym. So it's like, because it's one thing when one person is getting this concept but when the whole collective is like, actually, it's kind of cool when we're all a little bit different. Actually, it's kind of cool when someone's being a bit weird and outside the box, because it gives us all permission. And that's what creates all the best ideas and inventions in the world, And so I love driving that home of like, I love to tell this story of like, do you think that when people said, I'm going to build this thing and we're going to put a piece of metal around people and fly them to the other side of the world, do you think that people were like, that's weird? But now we have airplanes. Or the people who thought, what if we do this thing and you flip on a switch and lights will come on in a room? Like before that, we just had candles. So that concept was really weird. But now we have
Yeah.
lights. And so I'd really drive home that it's actually in the differences, in the thinking outside the box, in the being weird, in the being expressed, that our best ideas and inventions come through. So that's one concept. And then the other, big concept is like, it is healthy and normal to feel emotions. And when we can express them in healthy ways, then they don't come out in unhealthy ways towards the people we love the most. And that was really powerful. And just giving kids permission to feel is powerful. Now, working with adults, it's kind of like we're undoing the damage that happened
Exactly.
as kids, right? All of the kids that never got these messages now as adults get to learn and unwind that, like, you aren't too much when you're upset. It's normal and healthy to be angry and upset and scared sometimes. And can we dance with that? It's, all of the people that are self-conscious, I hear it all the time, of their bodies, of moving their bodies in public or in front of people. It's like we get to break through that together. And so, for kids, it's like one layer of healing, and then for adults, it's like inner child healing. So, but often the adult healing is deeper and more profound because they have the awareness to have the conversations, and they've seen how that thing has affected them in different areas of their life, and how not having that healed or having that fear of being seen in their creativity is actually affecting them at their work, is actually affecting them in their relationship, is actually affecting them in all these different areas. So the dance floor is such a metaphor for life. And so with adults, it's just a little bit more of a deeper conversation, especially in this world where we're all doing inner child work, where we're all going back there and really looking at, like, why I am the way that I am. And so they have very similar nuances for sure. And it's very different in the way that we teach. Like Dance Alchemy is a very different program than dance play.
Yeah.
You
But I think hopefully by working with children, you're kind of nipping it in the bud rather than them. And I also think it's interesting what you said about this, that it's okay to be different thing, because I see that in the generations coming up now. We didn't have that in the 60s and 70s. That was the thing. You were expected to be different. And now I go somewhere like a coffee shop and I see all the girls dressed exactly the same. And I wouldn't be able to recognize one from the other. And I mentioned this to one of my children. I said, I don't understand this. And they said, yeah, now the thing is that everybody should look the same. And that's really dangerous. That's like that homogeny is dangerous. Like when they make hybrid plants, the problem with that is that one blight is going to wipe them all out. If everybody's exactly the same, when one thing goes wrong, everything has gone wrong. And so I think hopefully as adults and as healers, we can see that this issue is coming up in children, and yes, do things like these programs to help them express who they are before you get to be 40 and you wonder, who am I? You're having your midlife crisis because you have no idea who you are. So I think it is a bigger problem now than it probably was like with my generation. So yes, I think that we need to be mindful of what's happening amongst children, because otherwise we will be doing very different kinds of classes in the future, trying to get everybody out of whatever it is that's breaking right now. So so that's great that they're getting that experience of being told, yes, it's okay to be different, and yes, you might even want to be different.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same thing as, like, if everyone's trying to be the same in the way that they look, it's like, it's also reflective on the way that you think. And now you're not
Sure.
thinking for yourself, and you're not
Yep.
thinking objectively. And that, as we've seen in the world, is an issue. When
It's
people
very
aren't,
dangerous.
it is a very dangerous thing. And yeah, so I think there's many nuances to that. And I think there are more initiatives to get people out of that, like, because there's such a deep feeling and need to belong. But rewriting that being different is belonging. And I think we're still working that one out.
Well, and maybe it's not even about belonging, but being accepted. Belonging kind of means that you belong to a specific group. Well, why can't different people belong, different types of people be together in one group? I think that's another concept that could work.
Well, I mean, that's actually a healthier way for a society
Yes.
to operate.
Uh-huh. Diversity. Yes.
Diversity, exactly. So,
Yeah. Beautiful. So I wanted to ask you about your work in Kenya. You were working with women and children. What was that? Was that a program similar to Vancouver or more like the Alchemy, Dance Alchemy, or
well, so I started going to Kenya in 2011. And I went to do a volunteer trip to work in a school, and I'd heard about this amazing organization. I did some volunteer trips in university, so I was very involved in international volunteering and just really curious about the world. And when I was there, the women found out I taught dance, which was more of a healing dance at that time. It was, and we started dancing because they were like, "Will you dance with us?" Of course, I'll dance with anyone. Who wants to dance with me?
yes, please.
For sure. I mean, I thought they were going to teach me, which they did teach me a lot, but they really wanted to learn what I was teaching. And of course, in the slums of Kenya, when you're dancing, we have to dance outdoors because there's no indoor spaces for this. And people started coming from all over because they'd hear the music. They were like, "Sweet, we're having a dance party. This is amazing." And then they'd see, they'd start to see us dancing. And in that, people were starting to ask us questions because the community we work with has HIV/AIDS and they're single moms. And this particular organization, Living Positive Kenya, was really created to help women with HIV/AIDS heal and recover from HIV/AIDS, learn skills so that they can then build businesses so they can support their families and get out of the poverty cycle of the slums, which often ends up with them being prostitutes and drugs and like all of that. And so the stigma was that with HIV/AIDS, it was kind of like leprosy. Like if you were around someone with HIV/AIDS, you could get it like a cold, but that wasn't true. And so, as we know, many people know, HIV/AIDS is mostly spread through blood and blood exchange. And so we were able to start having conversations because people were like, "Aren't you afraid to dance with these women?" And we were like, why would we be afraid? And so we just started having these conversations about HIV/AIDS, and then it more metamorphosized into nutrition because they were all like, "You all have water bottles. Why do you drink so much water?" And like, these certain things. So of course we all gave them our water bottles when we left, and we're like, "Drink more water." And every year we would go back and different projects would emerge. One was a beautiful nutrition project where the organizer had bought land and they started to garden and learn about nutrition and how to like heal their bodies, which they had no knowledge of. They were just eating ugali as they were very poor. It was $1 for a bag. It feeds the family for a few days or a week. But it's like cornstarch mixed with water, right?
Okay.
It's like there's no nutritional value. So we started doing nutrition stuff, and every year we would dance with them, and then we'd teach them how to teach it, and then they were going and teaching in different communities, and it's turned into this beautiful expansion where it wasn't just about dance. It was really about education and about breaking down these stigmas. And also, like, the dance was really important for them, for their mental health, for their emotional health. And for their physical health, because they weren't necessarily doing a lot of physical activity. They just didn't know and they didn't have access.
Yeah.
And dance is such a big part of the Kenyan culture, as it is in many, many places. But when someone has had a lot of trauma, when they are struggling to survive in the slums, they're not dancing a lot, right? They're just struggling to get by. So it's been a really beautiful therapy for the women as well, to help them heal their mind, body, and soul. So I've been there 8 times now, and each time we
Wow.
do movement and dance and um, different microloans to help the women with their business. There's a school there that we work with that sometimes I take teachers and they can do their practicums there. Other times I take entrepreneurs and they support the women in their business. And it's just been a really beautiful part of my heart, and a project that tends to continue to reemerge in my world and in my life, and different people being like, "Can I come?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go. What do you want to do?" Because it's such a beautiful, the woman who runs it, everyone calls her mom, and she's like a Mother Teresa and Oprah and a human, and just like makes so much goodness happen from the goodness of her heart. So yeah, that's one of my favorite places.
Beautiful. We need more of that. I
Yeah.
think that's how we change the world, is just by doing it.
Yeah.
And I think what you said about, these women not thinking about dancing, I think a lot of times people don't realize how healing dance actually is,
Yeah.
and may feel like if people around them are suffering, they shouldn't be dancing and celebrating and all of this. But in fact, by doing it, you are actually helping others and healing others. And so I think it's important to make that point, that it isn't just about a celebration. It's about being able to do some deep work and some healing work as well. So
Totally.
um, yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So let's circle back to Dance Alchemy, and how is it taught? Like, how are you teaching this? If people wanted to take a class, do you give live classes online? How are you doing this?
Yeah, so most people take trainings with me online. We will be starting up. I haven't been teaching too many like just live dance alchemy classes because I've been so busy. I just got back from a few months presenting at a bunch of conferences, events, and festivals across Canada and the US. But our instructors are starting to teach online. And then when people want to learn how to teach this, to bring this into their practice, to run classes, a lot of coaches and healers want to bring dance into their offerings. So they have that deep somatic healing aspect. So you can learn online. My next enrollments will start in January. We have a level 1 foundations training that is
Okay.
8 weeks, and you learn how to teach dance alchemy. You learn how to teach songs, you learn the whole structure. And then we have a 6-month somatic and embodiment certification. So this is for the person that really wants to dive deep into more of the somatic healing, more of the energetic healing, diving deeper into emotional alchemy, and just even into that embodiment work. The women in that certification are having the hugest breakthroughs of themselves. Like one woman, like it's just mind blowing to me what can happen in 6 months. So this is for the person that really wants that wisdom and knowledge, and to take their dance practice to the next level. So it's kind of like foundations is level 1, and you do learn how to teach. And the certification is like, let's deep dive into all things dance and healing and energetic healing and emotional and inner child work. And we just dive really deep and really bring a lot more of the movement into it. And the most profound healing happens in that container. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to do like a beginner's course, what does a beginner's course look like? Like, is it a workshop, or it's a series of
Yeah. Like a beginner's dance.
classes, or just
Yeah, we're going to be launching a series of dance alchemy classes that people can take online, because we do have people from all over the world. Um, yeah, and then the other thing that they can do is that they can always email us. We are building this out on our website, but for all of our facilitators who are teaching in person, which we have people in Egypt, we have people all over Europe and Canada and the US and Costa Rica, teaching classes, so that we can also connect you with someone local if there is someone local in your area. So both online and in person, go to the website or follow me on social media. The social media gets updated a lot more. So go and follow me on social media, either Brook Yantzi or Dance Alchemy Somatics. Both of them I update. And we'd love to dance with you. We would love to dance with you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you.
You're so
Thank
welcome.
you, Brooke, for joining me today and talking about all of what you're doing. It's beautiful, and I hope that people will check it out either through the website, through Instagram, and all the links will be in the show notes. So if you want to find out more, you can go find Instagram or Brooke's website. And I hope you will have the opportunity to dance with Brooke or one of your facilitators. So beautiful. And thank you for all the work that you're doing, because I think you're doing important work around the world. We need that. We need to infuse the some positivity into everything that's happening around us. So thank you for being one of those people that's doing that. All right.
And
Well,
thank you
thank you,
for
Brooke.
having me. I appreciate it. And for all the beautiful work that you do. It's really remarkable.
Thank you. All right. And thank you to the audience for listening. If you want to find out more about my work, you can go to universaldancer.com. And I also have an online school, which is universaldancer.thinkific.com. And you can also find links to my social media there. So please follow up and definitely get in touch. If I have a very basic dance as a spiritual practice course, please check that out. And I hope that we will see you again next time. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.